All right, welcome everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. We are talking about anatomy, which might be a kind of weird topic. So why is anatomy such a big deal? What's the point in being the semantics police? And if I don't like saying penis and vagina, why should I? I don't think it's a big deal perhaps. But I think these are all really important questions to cover, and we're going to try to answer them in the next half hour or so. I'm really excited for our guest today, and we're going to try really hard to keep it to the time. And we'll also answer questions at the end. So if you have a question, you can post it on the main event page, and I will check back at the end to see if we can answer those if anything comes up, or if you have a burning question that you're not sure if we're going to answer. Hopefully we'll cover it. And I just want to introduce us first. My name is Stacey Spenceley. I am a certified holistic health coach, and I specialize in supporting overwhelmed perfectionists to make sustainable diet and lifestyle changes. I also started semicrunchymama.com as a resource that I wish I had when I was pregnant for non-judgmental parenting resources that kind of straddle the crunchy spectrum or the border of that. And I'm really excited to have Rachel Rainbolt here today from Sage Parenting. Rachel is a homeschooling and attachment parent of 3 boys, and she has nearly 2 decades of experience working with young kids and parents. I have to read some of this because she's so accomplished. She has a master's degree in family therapy, so she's actually, most of us are just, regular parents. She's actually a trained professional parent. And she's a parenting expert, media advocate, author, and certified parent educator. And you can find her information at sageparenting.com, and we'll link to all this at the end. So welcome, Rachel. I'm so excited to have you.
Thank you for having me.
I am very, it's not everybody is like, hey, Rachel, you want to come online and talk about vulvas with me? And you're like, yes, that would be awesome. So the inspiration for talking about this topic was twofold. One was I saw some posts online with some parents having some questions about dealing with nudity and talking to their kids. And some of the answers of how parents had dealt with this, some of them were funny and some of them were kind of horrifying. They were funny at the time, but perhaps not building up a good foundation for their children's success in the future.
Right.
So Rachel has written a really amazing post that you should all read. It's a little long, so don't read it now. Called Your Vulva is Not Lord Voldemort. And I think it's got some really good information in there. But I thought we would start by breaking the ice a little bit and sharing what are some funny anatomy-related stories dealing with your children.
Oh, yes. So the other day I was at IKEA, and we were in the bathroom. Like, we had to wait in a line. It was that crowded. We finally get in, and I have my just-turned 3-year-old son with me. And, of course, I'm menstruating, and I have to change things out. And all of a sudden he yells, "Mommy, why you put something in your butt?" And the whole bathroom just went like awkward, silent, and snickers and giggles everywhere. And of course he and I have had this conversation about menstruation and vaginas and all of that a million times, but he's 3, so you have to tell them, they digest it in bite-sized chunks. And so we had to have a nice conversation for all of the 3 people in the women's restroom at IKEA, just reminding him about menstruation and vaginas and what I'm doing and narrating the entire process. And yes, coming out of the bathroom, everyone was trying to avoid eye contact with me and giggling and laughing. But it's all good. He got his lesson learned.
The teachable moments.
Teachable moment. No shame. No shame. The vagina game.
Right. I think my challenge has been, my son just turned 2, but he's talking a lot. And we have a lot of conversations about, please don't put that on your penis, whatever that may be, because it can hurt. And then he likes to come. He potty trained himself a couple months ago. So, but he's 2, so he comes in the bathroom with me because that's when he must be held or nursed or whatever. Mm-hmm. And he gets really excited when I wipe, and so he's like, "Mommy, wiping her vulva." I'm like, yes, honey. But it's those moments of like.
I was on the phone with my friend the other day, and I heard her yell, "Please remove your penis from the peanut butter jar."
Yep. Yeah. Well, I think we had it. Please don't put the spoon on your penis. So, yeah. Anyway, so I think some of it is funny, but it's also a very important topic. So I would love to hear kind of your 2 cents on why you think it's important.
Well, it's interesting to me that it's really sort of this blind spot for a lot of parents and a lot of families, because they'll be going about their lives parenting in this way with openness and honesty and attentiveness and all these other things, and then this one issue, it's like this bubble of like shame and awkwardness and ignorance, and we don't talk about it, and that has always sort of perplexed me. So that's why I felt like writing this article was so important, and why talking about this issue is so important, because there are tons of benefits to having open and honest communication with your children about this stuff. And the research shows us there are a lot of negatives that come from not having open communication and honest information on this topic. So it's something that's really important to discuss, and not a lot of people are discussing it.
Absolutely. And I think it's interesting that a lot of people kind of have this kind of mixed feelings about teaching sex ed in school, because the assumption is that kids should learn that at home, but kids don't learn that at home because we don't know how to talk about it.
Mm-hmm. And also, I think that the sex ed in schools is really important and unfolds very naturally if you're talking about teaching biology and anatomy, which they do. They teach all these things, but then they just don't talk about that one system of the body. And I remember when I was in 6th grade, my parents signed the permission slip because we were doing all the systems of the body. We got to reproduction, and the teacher stood up there. This is what he said. He said, "This is a penis. These are testicles. A girl has a vagina. Testicles and an egg make a baby." Like, I was like, what? 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 And I went like years not understanding how babies were made, which is ridiculous.
Mm-hmm. Well, something I love that I've read several things that you've written, and we've talked about this too, is that like also like people think there's like this big build up to like the birds and the bees talk, and there doesn't have to be a talk.
Yes.
It's just sort of a natural learning process. Do you kind of want to explain?
Yes. Well, like I mentioned with my 3-year-old in the bathroom at IKEA, like that was one small bite-sized chunk of him digesting that birds and bees talk. So instead of like when your child is 16 and going out on dates, sitting down and having some talk, it really shouldn't be that way. It should unfold bit by bit, piece by piece, by establishing this lifelong relationship of openness and honesty and information on this topic, just like you do every other topic.
There was some viral video going around that I never got around to watching, but I guess it was like parents explaining to kids how babies were made, you know, like youngish children, and the kids were all like, "Oh my god!" And I loved it. My favorite part was that my friend kind of rolled her eyes, and she posted a picture of a video of her explaining to her just 2-year-old over breakfast how babies are made. And she's like, "Okay, son, I'm going to explain to you how babies," and it's just him. He's this little blue-eyed angel, and he's sitting there like eating his Cheerios. He's like, she's like, "I'm going to explain to you how babies are made." He's like, and she's like, "Okay, the man puts his penis in the woman's vagina." He's like, and like goes through this whole explanation and process. And he's just like, "Okay." She's like, "Any questions?" He's like, keeps eating his cereal.
Yeah, you know? It's not awkward for children at all. It's only awkward if you have spent their entire childhood avoiding talking about these things and sort of wrapping them up in shame. Then it becomes really awkward because suddenly you have to punch through that wall, stick your head in, say a bunch of things quickly, and then get back out and then spackle it back up. So if there is no wall there and you just sort of always talk about these things, then it really does unfold naturally. And their competence in matters of anatomy and sexuality build up just like they do about gardening and science and math and love and all kinds of other things. It just is just one of many of those realms in which you get to guide them and inform them and empower them.
And that's an excellent segue to what I wanted to talk about next, which is I feel like a lot of the baggage attached to this issue it has nothing to do with kids. It's social constructions and parental discomfort.
Yes.
So I want to jump in here because we could talk about this forever. But I had a question a couple weeks ago from a mom. We were talking about potty training and about keeping your potty training child naked from the waist down so that they can learn to connect their body cues with the kind of
body awareness.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And she said, and her question, she's like, well, I have a son and a daughter, and so what if I don't want my children naked around each other? And I was like, why wouldn't you want, like, legitimately, I was like, why wouldn't you want your kids naked around each other?
Yeah.
And she kind of like looked at me like I was an idiot, and I was like, no, like seriously, I don't, like, who cares? And then another mom was like, well, if you're not comfortable, and I'm like, well, why wouldn't you, like, why? It's not sexual for children. So kind of, so I know you had some experiences with this too that we've talked about. I just read everything you write. It makes it much easier. Could you just summarize? Oh, you wrote a book about it. That's right. About kind of people who are uncomfortable either with their children seeing them naked or their children seeing each other naked, and what's up with that?
Well, like you mentioned, there's that social constructionist piece where if you look at other cultures around the world, it varies so widely what is considered appropriate or what people are comfortable with. And that's a big clue to us that there's not an objective criteria in terms of what is right and what is wrong. Whereas, like, molesting children, that's wrong. Like, you know, that's pretty much universally accepted that that's wrong. That feels inappropriate to everyone. Whereas nudity, that is completely not the case. So if you go somewhere in the Middle East and a woman shows her ankle, you know, that's wildly inappropriate. Whereas if you're on the beach in, you know, Europe, just having bikini bottoms is completely normal. So there really are no objectives in terms of what is right or what is wrong or what is appropriate or what is inappropriate. And then the other big piece that comes in is really the parents' baggage from their childhood. So if your parents didn't talk about this stuff, used a lot of shame language around it, euphemisms, things like that, which means that it's too shameful for us to even speak the word, then you bring all of that baggage into your parenting. So you feel like your body is shameful and needs to be hidden away, and then when you pass that message on to your kids, they inherit it, continues.
Right. And so for this example, you know, she was worried because she didn't want, her son is a year older than her daughter, and she's like, well, my son is really like interested when I change my daughter's diaper, and
which is totally normal, right? They're curious about the human body just like they're curious about everything else, about grasshoppers and rocks. I mean, it's really all that same curiosity, which is just their drive to learn, that all young children have. And the more you hide it and don't talk about it and discourage it, the more passionately they are curious about it and are driven to find answers, really. And if you won't give them answers, they will seek them elsewhere. So the best thing you can do for that is just to be open and honest. And nudity, I mean, studies show actually that parents who are nude around their kids, they do drugs less, they experiment less. There are all kinds of positive outcomes from it. And it's really just being authentic and being yourself and being normal and being nude in the course of daily life. Whereas if your kid walks in and you scream and grab a towel and hide, you know, as you're getting in the shower, that sends a really clear message that there is something shameful about my body and in turn something shameful about your body. And the same goes for siblings.
That reaction.
Yeah. Yeah. And the same goes for siblings.
That's so exciting.
Like, oh, what was that? That was thrilling. What was that all about? Yeah.
Well, I was in the Netherlands visiting a friend, and they had a walk-in shower in their bathroom, and like I was taking a shower around the corner, and I was 19, and like I think it's different because like I have a 2-year-old son. I don't care who he sees naked, but you know, once he's 16, I might have some stronger, different feelings about that, you know. But he like walked in the bathroom, was like brushing his teeth, and I was like, I'm taking a shower, and he's like, well, I'm wearing underwear, and I'm like, what? And he's like, well, I'm only wearing underwear because you're at our house, or else my dad and I would both be walking around naked. And he was acting like, and I was just having a heart attack because my mom was like pure at heart, and you know, and I'm just like, what? And he's like,
yes,
acting like I'm a crazy person.
It's just really important for everybody to understand that there is nothing inherently even sexual about the human body. So this is just your body. This is your natural state. This is the way you were born and came into this world. And clothing is something that's social. It's something that's cultural. It's something that we sort of just all got together and decided on. So there is nothing inherently sexual or wrong or shameful about the body. And it's important for kids to understand that as well.
Well, I also love, somebody had asked about, like, you know, seeing parents naked and explaining about that, and my comment was, like my mom and I went to Europe, and we've been to Japan, and we've been to the public baths and public bathhouses and saunas in like 4 different countries together, and I'm like, I'm in my 30s, and my mother is at least 30 years older than me. I will not out her on the internet, but she looks great. But you know, it's like I hang out with my mom naked now. Like,
Yeah.
why? Yeah. Because people are like, well, how old should your kids be before they stop seeing you naked? And I'm like, saw my mom naked fairly recently.
Yeah, exactly. And that really, you really let your children guide that. So, for example, you know, I'll get undressed in my closet, then walk around my room to the bathroom and get into the shower, whatever. When your kids start, if they leave the room when you do that, great, they can leave the room when they do that. You sort of allow them to guide that as you go about your normal everyday life. So there really aren't any situations in which I'm forcing my children to be naked with each other or anyone else. We're just going about our lives, and they can sort of choose in what pockets they want to coexist with us and in which they don't. So if your kid comes with you to the bathroom every time he pees, you know, when he's a toddler, completely normal, and at some point he stops doing that, right? He stops thinking that you peeing is super cool and something he wants to see. And so he just stops going in with you. You don't ever have to get to a point where you forbid him from coming in. He just one day stops.
So we were talking about before we started too, is that like, what about, like, my son loves being naked. I was just telling you, he got a book for his birthday called Naked, and he thinks it's hilarious. He loves being naked. But we did have to institute an underpants at the dinner table rule because I got tired of saying, please do not put cheese soup on your penis, and then having to wipe it off. I would much rather just wash underwear covered in cheese soup.
Right. Just toss it in the hamper.
So do you have any...
It's okay to institute some boundaries around being naked or touching yourself or anything like that, just like you would boundaries for anything else. So, for example, when my kids, we have a big backyard with trees and whatnot, and when our kids want to climb trees, they have to have pants on. You know, there are practical reasons for these things. If you want to climb a tree, you need to have pants on. Things will get scratched and hurt, and so pants seem reasonable. And if you want to touch yourself, that is your body, and it feels good, and that makes complete sense. But for our boundary, we say that's a private activity, so you have to do it in your room or in the bathroom, and you have to wash your hands before and after you do it. Just like I would say if they were trying to pick their nose, I would say, we were just at a store, you're going to put all those germs into your body, you know, wash your hands first and then wash your hands after so you don't then spread those germs to everyone else. So just any sort of bodily orifice hygiene is good. So you just teach them how to do it appropriately, just like you do using words or running, you know, all of those same things. Just apply all those same parenting principles to this area too.
Yeah, and I think that's really important. I've definitely seen people posting that are just like, oh my God, my child is like masturbating in front of my friends. How horrifying. So kind of what, you kind of glossed over this. Oh, I wouldn't say glossed, but you touched on it, but kind of what would you say to people who think this is like the most mortifying thing that's ever happened to them in their life?
Yeah, I would say that it's completely and totally normal. I mean, babies even in utero do it because it feels good, right? They don't have any hang-ups or issues yet. But it is completely okay to put boundaries in place, just like you say that your penis and your bottom and all those things are for you and they're not for anybody else. That sort of extends to self-pleasuring. Those parts are for you, so that is something that you do in your space, in your room, when you're alone in the bathroom, things like that. And that's completely reasonable and can be done without implying any sort of shame or that there's anything wrong with that, because that's something that I wouldn't do. You know, I wouldn't walk around the street and all of a sudden whip off my pants and start touching myself. So I'm not holding them to some...
That's illegal, I think.
Right. Now you're picturing it, right? Please don't picture that.
So I think that's a really good point, is that it's a boundary, but we say, you know, it's like that's something that we do somewhere else, not that's a bad thing, or
right. Not
that's gross, or, and I mean, hygienically, like, perhaps that's not clean in a hygiene way. Like he's like, oh, my butt itches. I'm like, that's fine, but now we need to go wash your hands before lunch.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I think that, you know, not having it be like a, you know, oh, don't do that, it's wrong kind of mentality. Listen, so this is actually a kind of, this is an appropriate segue. I also want to talk about a topic that I think body autonomy is really important for. Like you said, that's your body. And I think one thing that I think is the most effective way to convince people to use the correct anatomical terms for their children's genitals is the idea of sexual predators, which I think are super scary to a lot of parents.
Yeah.
You've ever been to like the Megan's Law website and looked at your neighborhood and then freaked out?
Yeah.
Don't do that. Don't do it. Well, it's good to be informed, but oh my gosh.
Yeah.
But, so I pulled some. I wanted to pull some statistics from the Megan's Law website because, first of all, 90% of child sexual abuse victims know their offender. And the majority of cases, abusers gain access to their victims through deception and enticement. It's not like somebody's going to snatch your child from a bathroom and like take them off to their car kind of thing.
Yeah, and that does happen, but not nearly as often.
Right, and then also that it's a child with whom they have an established relationship. So I think for me, one of the things that really introduced me to this topic originally, I think before I even had kids, when my niece was born, is we were on Skype and my sister said like, you know, something about like don't put that in your vulva, or I don't know what it was, or like, you know, and I was like kind of like, what's going on? And she's like, well, it's just what we do and it's very important because of this. And I was like, oh, and I read about it and it made sense, is that if somebody, excuse me, if somebody is going to abuse your child, they're not going to say, I'm going to touch your penis. They're like, you know, they're the ones, so like if your child comes home and says and starts referring to their genitals as like a ding dong or a hoo-ha or whatever term you don't use. Like,
yeah, in my article I talk about a little boy who was telling his teacher that his uncle was eating his Twinkie. Yeah. And he, for like a year, he tried to tell people, and he didn't have the language to communicate it. And of course, he was being molested, and his parents had been calling his penis his Twinkie. I think there are two components with that, like euphemism language. One, there's the issue of communication, that if they don't have the words for it, they can't communicate about it effectively. And you really need to have open communication about those things so that you can keep your kids safe. For all of the reasons you described, it's most likely going to be somebody that's recurring in their lives. It's not necessarily going to be one big, huge event from a stranger. And then also, language creates reality. So if you're just, or, you know, if she says, hey, what's a penis? And they say, and you just say, oh, well, boys have penises and you don't. She is not informed enough to even be aware that somebody, you know, violated her by touching her vagina, or by, you know, if you don't have the language for it, it really doesn't exist in your mind, so you can't make sense of it.
I also had a friend who had mentioned, like, they were really glad that they did this because her son, I don't know if he had like a UTI or like had some sort of injury, but he was able to like specifically say like, oh, like my scrotum itches or like whatever, like, and the doctor was like, because he was like, you know, 4, and he was able to like specifically identify what was going on. It's supposed to like down there hurts. Exactly. You know, and that's I think that's one of the hardest things as a parent with a young, like a newborn or young child, when they're teething or they have it, we don't know what hurts because they can't tell us. But if we don't give them,
imagine that you had a child and you never told them any of the names for any of the anatomy on their face. Like if you just, oh, that's just your face and we don't talk about it. Oh yeah, well, take your hands off it. Like no, don't touch it. That's just, like, that would be absurd, right? Because they wouldn't know how to clean their nose or how to brush their teeth, and if their eye was burning, they wouldn't be able to tell you. I mean, it's the exact same thing, just extended to another part of the body.
And especially, like, you know, right now, like, my son is potty training, so I probably, you know, and again, then I see him naked frequently, but, like, I see his face the most often. So, like, if he has a scratch on his face, I know if he was, you know, if he had a scratch somewhere else that he could tell me about, but I didn't necessarily look at to inspect all the time, like, that would be extremely helpful. So, I think that's very important. So, I'm just making sure we're hitting everything here. Oh, and then I think this topic came up too. Rachel has her son who is needing.
Yes, sorry, and making noise here.
No, you're fine. What? Your kids don't just like turn into little like zombies when you're doing other things?
Yes, no. My children are just as noisy as all of the other children.
That's why mine's not home right now, and that's why I'm doing it now. But
I have one of the 3, so that's why you're actually able to hear me.
Yes, makes sense. So yeah, body autonomy. I think I'm trying to think if there's any. I have the note, and I'm like, what did we not talk about that I wanted to talk about? Body autonomy important for preventing abuse, but I think it also, it's not just talking about like genitals, but also just not, grabbing our kids and moving them around and kind of teaching them that their body is their own and kind of teaching them how to take care of themselves is really important too. I don't have another good note on that. I'm sorry. I'm just so proud of us. I'm like, it's only 11:28.
I know. We did so well. We talked efficiently.
It's true. Well, I think they are just kind of concise explanations of like, that's why it's important. It's important for your kids' safety, for their hygiene, for, a lack of body shame.
For their information, for their education. I mean, if they don't know this stuff, they cannot make informed choices, right? As parents, we want to make informed choices. We want our children to be able to make informed choices. So just telling kids, like, no, that's bad, don't do it, does not equip them to make informed choices. So whatever your agenda might be, and a lot of people come to this specific issue with a pretty strong agenda, your child is their own separate person. And the best shot you have at encouraging them to make a choice that you would like for them to make is to give them all of the information that you can and then explain to them why you chose to make that choice for yourself. So just going the route of ignorance won't work.
So because I said so isn't a good answer?
No. Or because I forbid it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no.
I have a friend who's a certified nurse midwife. So she literally has patients who are pregnant who don't know that pee and babies do not come out of the same place on their body.
Oh my God.
It's like, how do you get pregnant if you don't know these things?
Yes, and that's why I think that is definitely a legitimate piece as to why a lot of parents don't talk about these issues with their kids. Yes, they have their own shame from their childhood and all of that, but a lot of them don't know. They really don't know the answers to their kids' questions. So informing yourself on these issues can be just as important as informing your children. And that's part of why your vulva is not Lord Voldemort is so long, because I feel like there are so many things that parents don't know, and so they can't have those conversations with their kids if they don't know the answers themselves.
Or honestly, if I had a nickel every time somebody said that didn't even know there was a vulva. Like, it's just your vagina. No, your vagina. That's not your vagina. That's your vulva.
Yes, in kindergarten, my son I remember him very clearly having a conversation with a little girl whose mother was pregnant, and the little girl said, "My mommy's having a baby. It's going to come out of her bottom." And my son was like, "No, it's not. It's growing in her uterus, and it's going to come out of her vagina." And the little girl was like, "What's a vagina?" It's trauma ensued. But yeah, I mean, it's just very matter of fact. Like, my kids don't feel weird about it. They know what this stuff is, just like they know what an elbow is or an ear is, and they know how to take care of their eyes. It's the same thing.
I posted this on my Semi-Crunchy Mama Facebook page that we were going to talk about this, and one commenter said that her husband was telling a story about their 3-year-old using the term penis correctly, but it was like a funny story. And the coworker said, if another child at my son's preschool used that word, I would remove my child from that preschool.
Which is so troubling. I mean, you cannot stick your head in the sand and pretend like an entire system of their body does not exist. That's so sad to me, because there has to be so much shame that person is carrying, and that's then going to get passed on to their kids as well. For someone to just use an anatomically correct term for a body part that does exist, that would force them to have such a defensive reaction that they would pull their child from their school. It just heartens me and it motivates me to share my article and this Google Hangout with more people.
Well, it's so important. I was just like, what? I'm like, what? Okay, I was like, for 2 days, I'm like, I don't even know what to say to that other than what.
Yeah,
There's a truck backing up right outside my window.
Is that a smoke alarm? Is your house on fire?
No, it's a truck backing up right outside my window.
Awesome.
Just wait a second.
Perfect timing.
It really is. At least it's not the ambulance that sounds like my coffee pot, actually. So, no, it sounds like my house alarm. Yeah, all of those things.
Lovely.
Oh, but yeah, and also I think body autonomy is a really helpful tool to teach our kids too. Just because I know for like right now my son just turned 2, so of course he pushes people because he's 2 and that's what toddlers do. It's developmentally appropriate even if it's frustrating to everybody. But it's such a good teaching tool. I've seen some friends with slightly older kids. It's like, you're in charge of your body, and little Jake is in charge of his body. So you can't push Jake because that's his body, and you can't move his body without permission. The same thing. Exactly, and I think that's the thing too. Is like, did you read this Lena Dunham article that she'd come out with? And like people were like freaking out about her autobiography. Because she talks about looking at her baby sister's vulva, and everybody's like, "You're a molester!" And it's like she was like 5 or something. And it's like little kids playing doctor, and it's like it's not. Again, like if my son were 16, I'd be like, "You were playing doctor."
And some of the big, from a therapy perspective, some of the red flags that we look for in terms of kids like just naturally curious and exploring those things. Some red flags that we look for, like, is there a major age difference to where, like you said, like if one kid's 13 and one kid is 4, like that would be a red flag for us. So there are a lot of different things that we look for, but by and large, the vast majority of that stuff is completely normal and just curiosity based and is nothing to completely freak out about. And like you were talking about with the body ownership, we send that message in the way we parent, and I know you touched on that too, but for example, one of my sons one time had a rash, and so he was at the age where I would tell him, since you have an ouchie, now we have to, even everything from going to see the doctor about it to putting the medicine on it, we would, as a parent and him not being responsible enough to manage it completely on his own, I would say, like, do you want mommy to rub the cream on, or do you want to rub the cream on? Things like that, where you're still making sure that everything is getting taken care of, but you are very clearly sending the message that you own your body.
Well, that really helped us when we went to his last well baby visit. Is I said, okay, the doctor's gonna come in and he's gonna look at you, so you're gonna be naked, which he's fine being naked. But, he's gonna take off. He's gonna take off. He's gonna look at your penis, and he's gonna look at your eyes, and he's gonna look at your ears. Exactly. And he's gonna make sure that you're growing and that your body is strong and healthy. And he was like, okay.
Yeah.
But then they wanted to give him one of his shots, and the nurse was like, well, just we'll just do it fast. I'm like, no,
you won't.
I'm like, okay, buddy, it's gonna hurt, but like the nurse is gonna come and she's gonna put something in your arm and it's gonna hurt a little bit, but I'll hold you and you're safe. And he didn't like it, but I was like, I'm not gonna like hold my child.
Sneak attack.
Yeah, I'm like, I just didn't feel like that really built a relationship of trust.
Yes, with you or with the doctor.
Right, exactly. Well, and when parents are like, oh, I hope you don't have to get a shot, or like use those like making the doctor scared, you're like, oh my gosh. No. So.
Cringe.
But anyway. All right. Well, I think we did a very nice job of keeping this on time. I'm so proud of us. No pressing questions that anybody has posted. I'll give them another 30 seconds to type really fast. Some people were at work and I know one person works in an office full of men and thought that they might have heart attacks if they heard us talking about vulvas, so she wanted to save it and watch the recording. So, although the same person, I'm outing her, but apparently they're pregnant with a little girl, and I don't remember what she said, but she said something about a vulva, and her husband, who's over 30, was like, I don't want her to drive a Volvo. Not even kidding. And she's just like, and I was like, I told you this topic's important.
Yes, this is what I'm talking about. Like, most people just don't know because we're told that you just shouldn't talk about it.
How can you have 3 children and you don't know what a vulva is?
Not okay.
It's true. All right. Well, thank you for being awesome. And thank you also for joining me today. I think it was super fun. I'm really excited. We're going to come back together. We don't have it scheduled yet, but to talk about having sex after having a baby.
Yeah.
Because we just like to talk about vulvas. I don't know.
Vulvas and penises, that's our jam, yo.
It's true. Well, I think, again, it's like those topics that, like, they're super important, but you don't know that they're important topics until you find out, and then nobody talks about them.
Yes, exactly, which does everyone a great disservice.
Yes. Because again, like, we're on the same Facebook groups, and, moms are just like, oh my gosh, this is weird. And we're like, and everybody's like, it's not weird. It's like, oh, no,
Yeah.
nobody bothers to mention it to you.
Yeah. Just nobody lets you know what it's going to be like or what you can expect because we don't talk about those things.
Exactly. Then again, I'm also the person who has an entire file folder on my computer of women breastfeeding in burqas. So
Because you never know when at a moment's notice you need to pull that out.
it's true. Well, I got tired of missing one, so I thought I'd find some more. And there's some really beautiful photos.
Yes, I have some too.
Excellent. All right. Well, Rachel Rainbolt, you can find. Well, Rachel, where can we find you, and what are you up to?
You can find me at sageparenting.com. You can hit me up if you need some email coaching where I can specifically help you through these really awkward, tough situations or parenting challenges that arise. And then find me on Facebook too, so we can chat and virtually hang out.
And you have your class tonight, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, if you're in San Diego and you want to go and your baby doesn't sleep, like mine doesn't sleep, and you want help, Rachel's teaching a class tonight at Nature's Whisperer.
Ooh, no, that one is next Thursday. Yeah, that one is next Thursday. Yeah, so there's still time. There's still time.
Okay,
yeah,
well, that's in March.
You remember that old friend Sleep?
No, I don't. Excellent. Well, Rachel Rainbolt from Sage Parenting, and we'll put the links to Rachel's Your Vulva is Not Lord Voldemort article and her Facebook page and all those things at the end of this video. And you can always check out more events like this coming up on semicrunchymama.com on the email list or at semicrunchymama on Facebook, which is a pretty easy find. But thanks so much, Rachel, for joining me, and I will excited to talk to you next time.